This is Envision Self-Healing Podcast, episode number 17. Hi, I'm Will Fuller.
And I'm Richard Miller.
And we are the co-creators of EnvisionSelfHealing.com and are dedicated in helping you improve your eyesight and quality of life
by taking healing into your own hands. This week's topic is facing your fears in vision improvement. And in the second half of the podcast, we're going to be answering a question that asks, why is it that I don't have a small circle of color surrounded by a large field of black and white if the cones are the only thing that see color and the rods see black and white?
So Richard, how's the Brazilian world of self-healing been treating you this week?
Well, we've had a very exciting week of training in anatomy of the eye and the whole visual system mixed in with eye exercises. And I've had some breakthroughs this week. In particular, was doing an exercise where I was obstructing my right dominant eye and using my left eye on an eye chart. This is sort of the highlight for me. Well, it was mixed in with a bunch of other eye exercises as well, so it's hard to give credit to this entire thing to one exercise. But I was actually able to see clearly the 2080 line and a couple letters on the 2060 line, which is a huge jump forward for me.
What were you seeing before?
I was struggling to see the 2000 line.
Uh-huh.
You know, I've seen the 2000 line clearly at times, but now I was actually down to the 2080 line, so... and picking up a few letters on the 2060 line. And a lot of that came from a lot of the exercises this last week were obstructing my dominant eye and using my weaker eye, which has the large blind spot in it.
Okay.
So it brought a lot of clarity. I do have my left eye has less myopia. So for me, there's a huge advantage in obstructing my right eye and using my left eye more. And the other thing I did discover more of this week, and maybe this is related as well, is sort of finding the limits of my fusion. So, yeah, right? Yeah, because my left eye, again, because of the large blind spot, is somewhat suppressed. And so even though it's clearer, has less myopia, my brain tends to turn it off. So I have less... I'm not using both eyes to fuse on a single image a lot of the time.
And did you discover that when you were doing the beads?
Yes, doing the beads. Also, a particular device, optometric device that the teacher of this training had was like a flashlight with red and green lights on it. And I had red and green glasses on. And it's a flashlight you hold and you move it forward and back. And if you lose all the lights on the flash, it's kind of technical to describe, but if you lose all the lights on the flashlight, that means you're not fusing anymore. Oh. So I held it up, wearing the red and green glasses, and at 6-8 inches I was fusing, and then boom! As soon as I got past 8 inches, one of the lights went out, which meant I wasn't fusing.
So what's sort of on your to-do list to try and work on that?
Well, again, it's and this sort of relates to presbyopia. To the listeners, the eyes sound like a simple thing, but they're actually quite complex. The overlapping problems and issues make it a complex thing. So what I have is a lack of weakness in conversion. My eyes coming together to fuse on one image. So maybe a weakness in the muscles on the inside of the eyeballs, the extraocular muscles, plus the brain's ability to fuse at a distance farther than 8 inches. Those are my two issues, the lack of muscle control on the inside of my eyeballs and the brain power to fuse the two images together. So I need to do a lot more convergence exercises, which
you were doing with the presbyopia.
Which I was doing with the presbyopia as well. So that gives me a double reason for doing it. So.
But maybe just at more of a distance.
Exactly.
And I suppose maybe a bit more of the beads, I guess.
More of the beads, which are not my favorite thing, yes, because I have trouble fusing the beads at a farther distance. So, yeah. So I know what I want to do. I could see the benefits immediately, so it's all positive.
Yeah, it
All very
certainly helps motivate you to want to do your eye exercises more.
Right.
When you see those glimpses of clarity and improvement.
Well, and it supports our theory, too, the learn, create, integrate, because now it motivates me when I know exactly what's going on in the muscles and what the issues are. If some doctor had just told me, do this exercise, it'll help you, it wouldn't work for me anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Especially as it takes time.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like you're just going to do it once and then all of a sudden your fusion's better.
Right. And those flashes of clarity are very motivating. When you get them, it's especially for somebody like me who hasn't seen that clearly. I guess it would be motivating to someone who had a vision loss too. But for me, it's pretty exhilarating to suddenly see clearly for a little while. So
yeah, I had a similar experience on the last day of our 10-day course. On the last 2 days, we did workshops, and all the people that were the advanced teachers, we took a 2-day workshop in a nice rural part of Brazil, and we had about 30 odd people come along to these lectures that we were doing, which was fantastic. And one of the lectures, they were doing fusion, and so they had the beads out again.
Right.
And I was doing the beads, and I always see, because my left eye is my weaker eye, and it's the one with the cataracts and the pseudomacular hole, it's suppressed just the same as yours.
With the blind spot, yeah.
And also it's a little bit foggier. So, but when I was doing the beads, 2 people were waving, because there were so many people and so many we were surrounded by so many teachers, everybody was
there was almost too many people to deal with. So you had like one person holding the beads and 2 people on either side of you with nothing to do with this. So they started waving. I could see this. Yeah.
So, and I couldn't even really see their hands waving in the periphery, and to be honest, it was starting to get a little bit annoying with these random people that I hadn't even asked. They weren't random, but friends that we had, waving the hand. I thought, well, this isn't doing anything.
Yeah, I can see it on your face. It's like, why are they waving out there? This is the bead exercise. I'm looking forward. Yeah.
So, but all of a sudden, both 2 beads came in clear. Like the colours were a lot clearer on both beads. So those of you that don't understand the bead exercise, it'd be really nice that everybody goes and reads the website so that we don't have to explain everything.
Yeah, we're kind of forcing them in these podcasts because we talk about stuff. They're like, what the hell are we talking about?
So with the beads, whatever bead you're looking at, there's 1, which is the fusion, and then whatever you're not looking at, there's 2. And I'm not going to go into any more detail than that.
It's a string with 3 beads on it, if you want to visualize it that way.
So, but for me, because one eye is seeing one bead and one eye is seeing the other bead on the 2, one is slightly foggier and not as clear, and the other one is clear because of the clarity of both eyes. So, but as they were waving, it engaged my left eye, and the 2 beads were clearer. It was quite the experience, and I couldn't explain it, and I guess we'll talk about that a little bit more in the topic of the week.
Yeah, I could see it was on your face too, that your mind was kind of blown, like, what just happened?
It did surprise me.
Yeah.
But I did find that when we were at the airport leaving, we were in Sao Paulo doing the course, and now we're here in Rio de Janeiro, which is a beautiful, beautiful city.
Yeah.
And we've only been here 1 day, but we've been really enjoying ourselves so far. But I noticed in the airport on the way here that I could see more of the airport, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And the floor was black and white checkered flooring. And as I was walking, I was able to see the flooring moving below me. So, I mean, it's the perfect floor.
It's the perfect flooring.
Black and white to help activate the peripheral cells, and with the on and off and the peripheral movement.
Right.
So that might have had something to do with it, but I certainly noticed there was less strain in my eyes going through the airport, and I could see a lot more of the world around me. So I was pretty pleased about that.
Well, until I thrust my roller bag beneath your feet and almost tripped
trip over it. Yeah, somewhat ironic that we that I talked about this before we left in maybe episode number 15 or 14, how one of my pet hates in airport are people that have their bags on these long rollers, and they just cut you up.
Yeah.
So I just trip over them, and of course on the way into the airport, Richard did it to me, and I tripped over his luggage bag. And I think I remember at the time saying that would make the podcast.
You did. Yeah, it did.
So so obviously my periphery had improved, but not that much.
Well, it was pretty hard.
But no, we're really enjoying ourselves here in Rio, and I noticed that still my vision feels a lot fresher, and that my non-dominant eye is still relatively activated, and the right one hasn't had a chance to overly dominate so far, probably because we're not spending as much time on the computer. But there was certainly nice. Yesterday we did paragliding.
Right. This was we've been having a great time meeting Brazilian. A bunch of people at this conference are trained occupational therapists, physical therapists. It's pretty amazing down here.
And a lot of people that's been doing vision improvement for 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
And just have a thriving, successful vision improvement practice down here in Brazil. It's beautiful to see.
Yeah, and we're kind of inspired because people down here seem to be taking self-healing and bringing it into the mainstream sort of optometric world, and it doesn't seem as possible to do in the United States. And maybe because it's a smaller place, or I don't know, they're more open to it.
Well, two of our teachers were on the Brazilian equivalent of the Oprah show down here, and that just blew the lid wide open, and you know, all 40, 50 of the practitioners. I mean, there's over 200 in all, but just on the course that we were at, there were 40 or 50, and they all sort of just got a big boost in clientele, obviously from being on the Oprah show. And the woman that a good friend of ours now, a lady called Sylvia, who overcame her blindness and is now a vision improvement teacher. She was on the show as sort of the guest, and then it was our teachers that were there supporting it.
Yeah. Anyway, the reason I brought this up was one of these people who were visiting here in Rio, she mentioned that she liked to go paragliding. And of course I picked up on it immediately and said, we got to go. So
time to run off a cliff.
Yep. So we organized that for the first day. In fact, we changed our flight to Rio to the night before so we could go do that yesterday.
Yeah.
And we thought about wearing obstruction glasses or doing some sort of eye exercise with it, but then we thought better. I was like, okay, let's not push our luck.
Yeah, the health and safety. There's one thing having promoting vision improvement. It's another thing falling off a 1,000-foot cliff.
Right. So we just went paragliding. We just jumped off a cliff.
No, it was really amazing in the view. I couldn't think of a better distance-looking eye exercise than paragliding, facing Rio and seeing Cristo in the distance. And,
it was amazing.
Going over to the ocean. And certainly one thing I found that was so nice about it was just being able to let go. I mean, you have no choice but just to, I don't know, trust in the wind, I guess. You're just floating, and that and the guy behind you that's in control of the paraglide.
So we have videos now of Will and I actually took off at the same time. Our good friend Melissa Moody is with us here in Rio, and there was a funny moment when she didn't want to go, then she wanted to go, then she didn't want to go, then she wanted to go. And she's like in the middle of this as she's getting strapped into it. But then by the end she was smiling and jumping off a cliff.
Yeah, run and jump off a cliff. So no, that was fantastic, and I guess that's sort of why we came up with the topic of facing our fears. Because it really is just we're not suggesting that everyone should start running off cliffs. By no means. And certainly if you do that, we recommend having a paraglide with you and a paraglide instructor.
Yeah, to be clear, we had trained professionals behind us steering the thing, and we were not steering it.
But certainly someone like Melissa Moody, who was run over by a truck and has been through all this amazing story. If you ever get to see her website, which is transcendingtrauma.com, and find out a little bit more about her, and also the movie Happy.
Let's go to thehappymovie.com and you'll see some information on that.
And you'll see her life story there. But even though all of that she went through, being disabled for 3 years, and 15, 20 years later, she's jumping off cliffs.
She's jumping off cliffs.
And and just to see, I've just got this image of this big smile on her face as she turns over just before she runs off the end of this cliff, and the wind just picks you up and you just float off, and I mean, talk about really facing your fears. But Certainly, the topic of the week is more about facing our fears that we have in vision improvement.
Right.
So let's move on to topic of the week.
And the topic of the week this week is facing your fears in vision improvement. So the first aspect of this topic that we wanted to discuss was, what if eye exercises don't work?
And I mean, this topic could be huge, and again, I'm sure we're going to cover a lot more. But we just wanted to pick a few areas, and certainly one thing that we come across so often, and obviously experienced ourselves when we first discovered vision improvement, is, well, what if it doesn't work? What if I spend 6 months, a year, I'm spending an hour every day doing eye exercises, I'm reading about it.
Right.
What if I do all this work and it doesn't work?
Right. And it's in the back of your mind probably all the time. I guess it's not in our minds anymore. I guess that's true. It was for years, but it's not anymore.
Yeah, and I suppose, for us it's a little bit different, I feel, because of our conditions, and more so for me, mine is a degenerative condition. Mm-hmm. So, I don't really have a choice.
Right.
Because their medical science has nothing for it.
Right.
So they say, there's nothing they can do. Not that there's nothing can't be done, but there's nothing they can do.
Right.
And the only option, is natural vision improvement, which I'm really pleased about, because if medicine did have some sort of experimental surgery where they started splicing my retina, then there's a good chance my vision wouldn't be as good as it is today. Mm-hmm. But I know a lot of people that just with their glasses, and they can pretty much get along fine with their glasses.
Right.
Up to a certain point. And until later on, how we say that a lot of the pathologies and conditions that follow is a misuse of the eye, and a big part of that is the strain that glasses put on your vision. But I know it's just, I suppose, when you go to the ophthalmologist or the optician, and you sort of want to get a bit of clarification, justification, sort of. So I found out about these eye exercises, and what do you think? And your gut instinct is, this should work. If I can strengthen the muscles of my body, why can't I strengthen the muscles in my eye? Mm-hmm. It makes a lot more sense to us because we've studied the anatomy. So, but people that are hearing this for the first time, they look to other people to get clarification.
And that's why we do emphasize learning about the condition, and here's why the exercises work. That's why we include that in our information on the website, and is to sort of counteract those fears and to counteract what the eye doctors are going to be telling you, which they don't even understand eye exercises really. They just categorically say it won't work. And
if you ask them, when they say, oh no, eye exercises don't work, ask them how many eye exercises they've done.
Yeah, right.
How much did they study? I know when I first found out about Bates and Dr. Mir Schneider, I went to the optician and I said, she said, so I'm going to put forward for your next prescription for your contact lenses. And I said, oh no, don't worry about it. I'm not going to wear glasses ever again.
Oh, great.
And I'm not going to wear contact lenses. And she sort of just looked at me and said, okay. And I said, well, she's like, why is that? And I said, well, have you heard of, Mir Schneider and Bates? And she sort of laughed and said, yeah. And I said, well, what do you know about it? She said, we did one 40-minute lecture at it at university, and our lecturers pretty much just laughed it off.
Yeah.
And said, don't get involved in it and just move on with, the glasses. So you sort of have to be careful, really.
You do.
Because we put our trust in these people, but really, maybe if they did a 10-day course, say like we just did, or even if they just spent a few months doing eye exercises themselves. I know this is never going to happen.
It's never going to happen, I know.
Maybe in the future. But at least you've got an honest answer for them.
Right, and I guess the solution to that, the reality is this fear does lurk behind a lot of people's minds. Yeah. And it's almost an irrational fear. Like, I'm being stupid, I'm doing it, I
don't want to tell my friends because they're going to make fun of me.
Exactly. And then the doctors support that fear when you go to them. So this is why we've written the Learn section on the website, so that you can learn for yourself how these eye exercises can be working for you. And then we encourage you to go to your doctor and even tell them you're doing the eye exercises.
Yeah, make sure that we've never come across a reason why you shouldn't do the eye exercises. But just like anything, it's always good to get a checkup beforehand. And it's also, what's nice for us is that when they do all those nice scans and all the rest of it, when your vision does improve and you go back and get another scan, then you've got some evidence. And certainly feel free to send that to us when you have that evidence.
Right, and then just don't expect any support from them for doing the eye exercises, and expect them to be confused when you improve. Those are the two things you expect.
Yeah, I had that when my last checkup, and they said, "So you've worn glasses since you were 5?" And I was like, "Yeah." And they went, "But now you're a 0 prescription. This doesn't make any sense."
Right, I had a similar experience a couple years ago when I had my old prescription of 4.5 or something like diopters. And I said, I'm doing eye exercises. And he said, they don't work, and laughed at me. And then we did an exam, and my exam was 2. and I could just see the confusion on his face. So anyway.
But the point is that you need to know yourself. They're not taught this knowledge in their education. So it's up to you to do your own research and to learn yourself. There's nobody else to turn to other than a vision improvement instructor or yourself, and learn about it and discover how to improve your own eyes.
And I think eventually we want to create on the website a more of a support system for connecting with other people doing this, and that will help those fears as well.
It'd be really nice if you went, say, like me with RP, and you went on and you're like, well, it sounds nice. My gut feeling is that it should work. The body can heal itself. But, what if this is just...
What if it doesn't work? Yeah. And if you could talk to someone who was maybe 6 months ahead of you and had RP, it really would alleviate some of those fears.
Not even just one person. Because some people, even though they talk to one person like ourselves, they're still like, okay, well, that's one person. But what about...
Exactly.
So the more and more people that we can get sharing their stories and sort of building more of a community, just like on our Facebook fan page, or certainly something we want to get going on the website at some point, is it just helps with those fears and sort of overcoming those final fears for vision improvement.
Right.
And even I remember we got an email, and I'm sure we've brought this up a few times, from a guy that said he wanted evidence. This was his fear. What evidence do you, what scientific studies do you have? And then he finished with, I have seen improvement in my own eyes, but I just want to check what evidence you have.
Right.
And he had retinitis pigmentosa, so he had physically seen the improvement himself.
Right.
But he didn't trust himself or his own vision.
Yep.
He wanted a piece of paper that
right.
had statistics on it, which is fair enough. That's how we've been raised.
Yep.
Doctors talk about 60% people this, and
right.
Take these pills X amount of days.
Right.
So it's interesting to see how these fears sort of live within us. But certainly a lot of it is from our environment.
Yep.
So, but I suppose that goes into one of the second things, which is, how can we trust these people? It's very similar. Like the next thing is, well, who are these guys?
Yeah, who are these two guys?
And I know, even ourselves, when we've been sort of researching on the web for other vision improvement people, and we come across, get 20/20 vision in 10 days.
Right. We don't trust them
take off your glasses. Never wear your glasses ever again.
Yeah.
And, to me, it's just it sounds like a sales. But, personally, I've never tried it, so I can't say that those things don't work.
They probably do work, but we often react if somebody comes off in a kind of a salesy kind of way. That's my first instinct. It's like, oh, what the hell are they selling me here? And even though we know the exercises probably work that they're proposing.
Yeah, I'm sure they do. But for me, I know that we suggest 6 months minimum. Not that you're not going to see any improvement in 6 months, but be prepared to spend the next 6 months doing eye exercises every day. You need to dedicate yourself to it. It's just like exercise. If you're somebody that's overweight or unfit, and you just, you walk 5 minutes a day once a week, then you're not going to lose weight and you're not going to get that much fitter.
Yeah.
So you really, and people, and I guess this is part of the fear as well. People don't want to put that effort in,
right?
Because again, what if it doesn't work? What if these people would just, sending me a sales pitch? But for ourselves, again, we've been around so many people and so many clients that we've helped and see improvement in their vision. And
this is one of the reasons we put out so much of free information on the website too.
Yeah,
we don't want you to just trust us because we say so. We want you to do the exercises, look at the free programs we put out there, and just try them out for yourself. So you prove to yourself that it all works.
And when it does, when you do see a slight improvement in vision, trust the improvement.
Yeah, it's so simple, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I can't really talk because only 2 days ago I didn't trust myself when I saw better with the two beads.
It is irrational, I think, too. So yeah,
because it goes against what we've been taught, I suppose.
Yeah,
but certainly this is why, like Richard said, we just have tons of all the exercises are on the website. We've got programs for you to try, and ways of getting hold of other people and ourselves through Facebook and Twitter, etc. And just give it a go and see if it improves or not.
Yeah.
And really, other than 30 minutes, an hour a day, you don't have anything to lose.
Yeah, and I guess essentially we're saying don't trust us, trust yourself.
Yes.
Do the exercises and trust the fact that your improvement is real.
And hence our tagline, take healing into your own hands.
There you go.
Because that's how Richard and I did it.
Mm-hmm.
And if when I first started, I'd come across some sales pitch and I'd brought this Get 20/20 vision in 2 weeks, and I would have tried it for 2 weeks, and my vision wouldn't have been 20/20, and I would have just dismissed vision exercises for the rest of my life. But
right.
I was very lucky that I came across finding the book of Mir Schneider in the beginning, and his approach was very much open-ended, and it's about the individual. So certainly try the exercises yourself and try and work on that sort of irrational fear somewhat.
So the last aspect of fear that we were going to deal with was the fear of seeing blurry. It's sort of the fear of blur, because part of what you deal with in vision improvement is either taking your glasses off or starting to look at what you see, which for a lot of see naturally, which is for a lot of people in our condition is blur, and so you tend to shy away from looking at that blur.
And there are some people that go into the psychology of that, and we're not going to go into that today. But sometimes people say it's something that you don't want to see, and I mean, why does anyone want to see blur?
Right.
Really?
Yeah, it's true.
People want to see as clear as they can see 24/7. I mean,
right.
I suppose it's not as being here in Rio and seeing people just hanging out on the beach, and like our paragliding instructor was sort of a typical tan, good-looking Brazilian guy, and his job every day is to do paragliding, and he goes surfing, and he fluctuates. I'm sure his vision fluctuates all the time, but he's out in the open, and he just, if he was sitting and reading a book all day, then I'm sure, or doing numbers, if he was an accountant or something, then the small fluctuations in vision would be a lot more intense to him.
Right. So so our average person that we're dealing with often has glasses, or they're using some device to make their vision clearer, and we're asking them to take that device away to do the exercises. So.
And not completely. Sometimes we say just to go down a couple of steps in your glasses, but certainly a few times a day. When you have that chance to just relax, you take the glasses off and just sort of. I mean, I don't want to say be one with the blur, but you just need to. That's your natural vision, and if you don't like it, then that should be more motivation to do the exercises and try and improve your vision if it's something that
Yeah, you are going to have to face that. It's a bit of a lack of control. I think a lot of people experience the blur as a lack of control.
When you go outside and you can't see the people's faces, and somebody's waving at you over the street and you don't know who it is and it's embarrassing. And...
Right, which is my life completely, but anyway.
And I know on a more, not advanced level, everybody has their own blurriness.
Right.
That is... that they have to work with and is difficult, and it can. And again, this is why it takes time, because vision isn't just putting on glasses. There's emotional sides to vision, other psychological sides of vision that we need to work with. But like myself with the periphery, the key to my vision improvement is accessing that blur in my periphery.
Right.
If I can engage with the fuzzy areas in my periphery, I can re-engage the brain and not allow the vision to diminish as much as it would. So just trying to keep it going. I suppose the same is with the blind spots.
Right. Yeah, I have to actually engage those blind spots, which means engaging an area where I don't see well at all. And so I avoid
just doesn't
those.
Make sense.
I know.
Why would you want to spend time where you don't see well?
Well, and it relates, in your case, it's like walking down the street. We've been walking in the streets of Rio, and Will is trying to look forward and use his periphery to scan the sidewalk.
And I walked into a concrete pole.
Well, laugh.
At least it was knee height.
It was.
I do want to have children someday.
Yeah. So I'm impressed that you're willing to do that. But that is facing your fear,
Yeah. But I mean, for me, it's more subconscious now because I do it every day when I walk in San Francisco, and there are no poles in the middle of the street.
Right.
And I know the area very well, and it sounds funny, but where it used to be something I was very embarrassed about, and I mean, then the fear sets in, and then my vision would get. But now, I actually kind of like it when I walk into something because it means that I'm using my periphery, and it does hurt my knee and for health and safety reasons, we're not recommending that people walk around down the street in their blind spot areas and end up getting injured. You have to take your own precautions on that one.
I just thought of something that may relate to what you're saying that I do now, and this relates to Brazil. In Brazil, so I'm a relatively shy person, but because of my vision, I'm guessing I hold back a little more than I would with better vision in terms of socially. Like greeting people. And in Brazil, that doesn't work.
You don't have a choice.
No choice. You have to go hug and kiss people, or you're being extremely rude. So for me, I couldn't hold back and just sit back and say, because it's easier for me to not greet people because I can't recognize them a lot of the time. Yeah. So that's my version of walking into the pole in Rio. So
nice social interaction.
Yeah, it's not a bad way to face my fear, going around kissing a bunch of Brazilian women. So
no, I think we should come here more often just for that reason. Just to face our fears of kissing gorgeous Brazilian women.
Yeah.
What a tough life.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think it's about a good time to move on to question of the week. So in the question of the week, this week is an email through our website from a guy called Dylan, who we're very pleased is sort of not only taking healing into his own hands, but he's also taking the theory work into his own hands as well. And he asks us that if the cones are only in the small portion of the eye and rods can only pick up black and white light, why isn't everything grayscale except for a small circle in the middle of the eye?
It's a really good question, actually.
It is. And it's something that's it's always that bugs a lot of people, I guess. And even for a while there, we were trying to figure out whether people see grayscale in the evenings because the cones respond to brighter light. So, but I think the easiest way to answer this is probably to divide the answer into two, and sort of psychological and physiological, I guess. Mm-hmm. And the physiological part is that we mainly have rods in our periphery, so 120 million rods in the periphery, but we do have some cone cells there as well. It's just the proportion is different.
That's way lower.
So just like the cone cells, they also do have some rods as well, but just
the percentage is much lower, much lower, yeah.
And in particular, somewhere like the fovea, which is only responsible for 1% of the vision, is where the most colour and detailed is. There's 2 layers of tightly packed cones, and that's where we pick up a lot of our crisp, clear, colourful detail. And it's just, I mean, it's only 1% of the retina, so it's a, you know, as it goes further and further out, then the cones are more and more dispersed as they go looser on the way out. So you do pick up some colour in the periphery, but it's just not as efficient.
Right. And the other thing we learned was the possibility, it's still a possibility, the textbooks disagree on this, but one of the people we trust down here has read some material suggesting that the rods, see, I get my confusion there, the rods do see some color.
Yeah.
And that's a bit of an unknown still at this point, how much the rods see color.
So we're not saying that's a definite, but it's interesting that there's some new research coming out that there's potentially the ability for the rods to pick up some colour as well, but it's on a very low resolution, and also, and we don't want to go into the neuroscience of it too much, but the way the rods, there's sort of a lot more rod cells to only one ganglion, which
transmits the information to the brain,
So it just means it's not as efficient, whereas in the central vision you have one cone to one bipolar to one ganglion. So it's like a direct link.
Right. The rods are very efficient at transmitting motion to the brain, but if they do see some color, the lines are not so direct to the brain. Yeah. That's the essential
and
part.
And your brain's always going to choose the better image, the better color. So your central vision, it's going to choose over the periphery anyway.
And that brings the brain back into it. And one of the things, a statistic we learned this week was that the vision is basically 90% from the cortex or the brain.
Yeah.
So the cerebral cortex.
And 10% from the retina.
Right. So that means that your brain is highly influential on what you see. And the psychological explanation for seeing color in the periphery is memory of color in objects.
So say you look at, it's sad really that I'm going to use this analogy, but the McDonald's sign, everybody can picture the McDonald's sign now. I mean, they call it the Golden Arches, you know, the yellow M with some red underneath. So if you were looking at the McDonald's sign and then you turn to the right.
Exactly.
Well, your brain knows, you know, even now you could picture the color of the McDonald's sign. So looking off to the right in your periphery, the brain knows that it's a yellow sign, and so you've still got that backup.
It's amazing, isn't it? That it can do that kind of leap and fill in the color for you.
And we're certainly looking forward to talking a lot more about the brain and the psychology of vision as the months and years go by, because it really is just, well, I mean, they're finding out new things, you know, every day about the impact that the brain and our psychology has on vision. So
well, and it's an opening for us to do more vision improvement. If we can deal with the memory and the psychological impact the brain has on your vision, that's another area you can improve your vision. Yeah.
And it goes back a little bit to what we were talking about with our fears. If you keep telling yourself that your vision can't improve, and 90% of your vision is from your brain, that is what you're telling you can't improve, then you're not going to improve.
Yeah.
So, well, we hope you've enjoyed this week's podcast. We've got a lot more sightseeing to do here in Rio, and we're probably going to relax a little bit out on the beach, and I'm sure you're going to see some blogs and some information coming out over the next few weeks on that. You can also find a lot of the pictures and some stuff that we've been up to here in Brazil on our Facebook fan page. Just look for Envision Self-Healing on there, and you can like our page and share some of the information that we've got going on there. Hopefully in the next week when we get them, we can put these paragliding pictures up, and there's probably not a picture, but you might get to see how I crash landed at the end, which I decided not to talk about because it is safe. And you can also follow both of us on Twitter, and my Twitter account is @WilliamFullerEN, and Richard's is
Richard Miller EN.
And you can also head over to our website at envisionselfhealing.com, get access to all those free programs that we were talking about, and also all the eye exercises that you can go try for yourself, and see for yourself, which is your son.
So happy healing.
So you can also get your hands on a free ebook on our website, and it's got a lot more information on the anatomy of the eye and how your vision can improve, and some exercises on how to improve it. So we hope you enjoyed this week's episode, and happy healing.
And have a good week.